Hello and welcome again to the Crazy Canuck Trucking Podcast. We are ever so glad that you chose to join us today. I am one of your co-hosts. I am the Size Matters Dakotan, Bridget, and I am here with
Crazy Canuck Dave. How are you doing today, Bridget? It's good to see you and to see and hear and get responses from all of our listeners. What's going on?
It's outstanding. Well, first of all, I actually am using show notes today for a change, so let's all be shocked and amazed. Let's all remember and denote this particular episode as where Bridget came minutely prepared.
Does that mean we have to be professional now that you're being professional?
That'll never happen in a million years, but thanks for asking. Now, as a reminder to all of you out there listening, please make sure to comment back to any of us by making sure you use the crazycanucktruckin@gmail.com or that website. And you can leave us comments, stories, ideas, anything that you care to share. We would love to hear. And that also funnels you to following us on social media, whether it be Twitter, Instagram, etc. Because we do really enjoy hearing back from the people who are out there listening. Now, today, I wanted to make sure to use a 10 code of a 1044. It's because there's a message for us, and that's what I want to highlight. But before I get to that, David, you have some messages we need to highlight.
Yes, I do. You remember our episode with AJ Ann Johnson from Scotland.
Yes.
She is one of our interviews from back in May or June of this year. Two episodes it took to cover her. And I've just been following along with her on social media as I do. And the fall has been kind of tough for her. And, dealing with brain injury, things can not always, there's not always a clear trajectory upwards. How do you like that word? Trajectory.
This word of the day calendar is really paying off for you, David. Nice work.
Man, you've got paperwork and I've got the words today. Oof. We're cruising. So anyway, AJ, just wanted to give a little shout out to you. We love you. We're pulling for you all the time, and you keep doing your recovery as best as you know how and following everything that you need to do, and know that we're all here pulling for you. So
absolutely. We like to make sure we support all the folks that have been here sharing their stories and talking with us. And there's so many good ones. Now, to add on to that, if I may.
You may.
I have a story here from someone who chose to send us an email. And I thought that was awesome, from Fred Grindle. And Fred, I'm going to apologize if I mispronounced your name. That happens to me a lot. Normally I'm referred to as Brenda. Part? Yeah, the Fred part, because nobody ever gets Bridget right. So I'm a lot of Brendas. No idea why. Nonetheless, what Fred wanted to say was he started listening recently and he had a 550-mile personal trip. So he really enjoyed hearing our discussion with James Menzie and the perspective that James brought on current driver shortages. But a question from Fred is whether or not we've done an episode on last mile delivery / courier, or do we know of any podcasts on this particular topic? He'd really like to learn more. Wants to get the conversation flowing, potentially might even be a guest for us. He has gone from youth pastor to courier. He's moved his family to follow Percolator to Brockville, Ontario, and how Percolator Brockville has been a huge success. That's a story he'd like to share. So up and coming, we may have an opportunity to talk to Fred, number one, but number two, to answer his question, David, know of anything regarding that last mile delivery service or courier service that we can direct Fred to, or is it going to be up to us?
I think we're the only trucking podcast people need to listen to, except for Lead Pedal Podcast,
Right. Good
Stan
friend of ours.
Campbell,
yeah.
Trucker Radio. Oh, and who's that other guy? Safety Dog.
Yeah.
Guess we're not the only ones, but
we all work together.
Him on. We do. Okay. We will get him on sometime, and we will have time to talk to him and see how things are going.
That'd be awesome.
We've got a lot of good people, and we have another good one coming up today. I'm really excited about this one.
Excellent. I hope people keep sending us these ideas and suggestions. And let's get to 1044 after those messages. I want to hear who's here to visit with us live and in person.
Live and in person, we have a lady that has got a master's degree in archaeology. So she's now in the trucking industry.
That really
She,
coincides.
yeah, she
Nice.
was a ballet for 15 years competitively, or dancing, I should say, for 15 years competitively, and then went into rugby. And she was human resources at a company, one for freight, and she took that company and made them the best. I don't remember how to put it now, Stephanie, but it was the best company with best HR practices. It was a big award. Like they've won that at least 2 times that I know of, and that's all because of Stephanie. She is the founder and creator of Minds for Matter, which is really cool. So she has gone out on her own now, and her passion seems to be helping people with mental issues and their companies how to deal with them. And of course, Bridget, you know how near and dear that is to my heart.
Extremely, which I can't imagine how she's actually able to fit all this in together at one time, mind you.
She's very amazing. So, Stephanie, after making you wait here for so long, thank you so much for coming on with us. It was really awesome to see you. How are you doing?
It is a pleasure to be here. I'm very good. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. It's trucking is very busy.
Yeah.
And we can give you time to close those blinds.
Yes, I was just about to say the sun has come right through my window. Just pardon me for a second. There we go.
It always happens like just as you get ready to go on camera, then all of a sudden, boom, out comes the light, right?
It's been overcast all day, and then all of a sudden the sun decided to come out. So I guess that bodes well for us.
Yeah, you come on and there's a spotlight on you, Stephanie. So
well, thank you for that very nice introduction. You guys are very, very sweet.
So tell us. We'll get to the current stuff first because I want to find out more about Minds for Matter. I've been hearing teasers about this, and I want to know. Tell us.
Mm-hmm. What's it about?
Well, it's been a long time coming, actually. This has been a goal of mine for several years, is to go out and create my own company, very much surrounding my skills and my experience and, you know, what I was able to do for One for Freight. I wanted to be able to offer that to other companies, mainly, you know, in the transportation industry, but they're not my only industry that I serve anymore. And yeah, so it's basically I call it a project management and consultancy firm. But really, I walk in and I look at the tools and resources that you currently have in place, or if you don't have any, I look to see what it is that you need to help workers solve business challenges on their own in real time. But to also give real meaningful help when it comes to policy development, HR and employment related matters, and basically just myself being a resource to other companies. I mean, we know in the transportation industry that companies have a tendency to get bogged down in the day-to-day operations, and a lot of this other stuff falls by the wayside, but it's really important to the overall success and the health and well-being of your team.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's so true. You can get so caught up in moving a piece of freight that you forget about the person that's behind the wheel or the dispatcher that you're putting a lot of pressure on to move that load, and he's not finding proper drivers or proper equipment or proper experience. Yeah. You know, and so is there any, I know there's not going to be any quick tips, but what would be a starting point for you to for talking to different companies?
Well, I usually get approached. For right now, I get approached by a lot of companies that I know. I am very familiar with quite a few of the carriers, particularly in Ontario, but I am starting to expand my footprint to Canada-wide. But how I kind of start is I look at, give me a little problem that you have or a little project that you need done that you have not been able to get to. And I kind of take that on and see, okay, what's the style of your business? What's the culture of your business? And then how can we breed that and demonstrate that through documentation, tools, and resources that are available for your team? And oftentimes those translate into actual employment and HR programming. It translates into, it kind of evolves the culture a little bit. And then as well, it actually has, a lot of my work has translated into curated training material and different development opportunities for team members and other people in the industry. So it's been a really neat progression, particularly over the past year. I incorporated the business back in September of 2020. I was planning on doing it sooner than that, but COVID-19 became our very real reality. And it actually gave me an opportunity to really hone in and focus on what it is that I wanted to do. And I'm actually thankful for that time, because I think it would have looked very different had that not happened.
Very cool.
So we're past the COVID time, so to speak, right? I'd like to say I'm in the States. I feel like I'm a little more past it than you guys are. So what's it going to look like in the future? Where do you want to take it?
Well, for me, I think I want to, well, for now, it's just me, right? Obviously, one day I do hope to grow the team, and I'm hoping to get into the tech space a little bit. I'm only going to go that far with that goal, but I do have some ideas for different tools and platforms that I could potentially offer some clients. So that's a really exciting path that I'm exploring. But right now, actually, kind of one of my main focuses is a partnership with Mohawk College Enterprises. We are going to be offering series of courses around two topics. One, professional driver improvement, mainly soft skills for professional drivers, and different learning opportunities that say they wouldn't necessarily get through the regular driver training or the mandatory entry-level training curriculum that's out there. And then the second kind of topic and umbrella that we are developing courses for is actually for HR in trucking. And what kind of started that was when I came into One for Freight, I came in as a safety and compliance administrator. I came in right as I was finishing my master's degree. Clearly, I was an art kid. And
yeah, that's right. Art kid transitions to trucking because they're so interrelated.
Yes. And I got into
there is when you do logbooks and stuff. That's really an art form to try and, do the old paper logs.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, no, that's actually really funny. But yeah, so I actually got into trucking because it's family business. I ended up working for my father, David Carruth. And like I said, I came in and I started out in safety and compliance. And then about 4 months into it, I was given the opportunity to start my HR designation and become the very first human resources manager that One for Freight ever had. Prior to that, It was quite a small business. Kind of between 2013 and 2014, it grew exponentially. And they recognized the need to actually have a full-fledged HR person. Mm-hmm. So I was going through my designation as I was in the position. And the one thing that I kind of recognized was there was very, very little in terms of material, resources, training for trucking specifically for people who manage people. And that was a huge hurdle that you have to get over, because not only are you learning, how to be in HR, you also have to learn the nuances of the industry as well. And as we know, there's so many different compliancy items that need to be considered. There's just an extensive amount of industry specific knowledge that you need to acquire in order to be successful in a role like that. So Ideally, what I want to create is a space for, people like me who were either new in the industry or, experienced in HR and, just didn't have any sort of familiarity with what goes on, in trucking. And not just necessarily HR people, but dispatchers, managers, other supervisors, owner operators who say have employees of their own, things like that. So I wanted to create something for them that would give them, a meaningful bit of knowledge and instruction on, day-to-day HR management of people in trucking.
Do you think that there's an awful lot of turnover, which has kind of prompted this, where in the industry, you just foresee that people don't have those things because they're coming in and out quite a lot? Is maybe that a little bit of where this came from? That's from me, the outside looking in.
I think there is an aspect of that. I also think that there's a lot of legacy knowledge that exists in experienced professionals' heads that has not really been transposed into, physical material that somebody can learn from. We're very good at running panels and events and, different learning opportunities that way. But, there's nothing really consistent that say, you have a new person like this in the position and, you could go and you help them learn that way. One of the things that I noticed, and through my time, particularly when I was a human resources manager, is I was getting reached out to by, other business owners who say, hired somebody new into their team who had very little experience and knowledge of the industry. And they would be like, can you spend some time with them? If they have any questions, can they reach out to you? That kind of thing. So I recognized that there was a need for that. There was not much available outside of, those kind of mentoring and coaching type opportunities.
Very interesting. Before I forget, tell us about those awards that you won for One for Freight, because those are HR awards, right?
Yes. So Trucking HR Canada runs the Top Fleet Employers Award program annually. And it's quite an extensive application process. It takes a significant amount of time to compile all of the information and attachments and data that goes into it. What I absolutely love about it is the fact that when you are responding to the questions, you have to back it up with physical proof of, the programming that you're talking about, the policies that you're discussing, and things like that. And we actually ended up being the top small fleet employer for 4 years in a row, I believe.
4 years.
4 years.
I knew it was extensive, but that's a huge deal.
Yes. And then this year at the 2021 awards, One for Freight won the Achievement of Excellence in Employee Engagement. So it's been a lot of really hard work, but I'm really proud of the team and I'm really proud of the company and the culture that we've been able to foster there. And, kind of, in that vein, I was, as much as bittersweet as it was for me to leave One for Freight, I'm happy at the legacy that I was able to leave behind with that.
And you're still working with them, so it's not like you're totally gone, right?
Yeah, so I am contractually, still in a relationship with One for Freight. So I am still around.
So you're dating, you're engaged. Is there?
So I am still around. I'm still there. I still do get calls occasionally and emails and requests for things, or where do I find this? Where do I find that? Can you help us do this? Can you help us write this? Can you direct us in the right way, in the right place for this information and things like that? So, but you know what? I'm actually very impressed with, how they have taken this in stride, and it really just makes me feel good to know just how successful that team is. And
good.
It's nice to be able to watch now and,
Nice.
kind of see it from the back view, I guess, or the rear view mirror, I guess.
Let's rewind. Since we've covered some current stuff here, let's rewind. Tell us about Stephanie as a little girl. What were your dreams? What was your childhood like?
I had a very privileged, loving childhood, and I have to acknowledge that. My success is very dependent on the fact that I grew up with a phenomenal support system. I'm an only child. I grew up in a house with both my parents and my maternal grandparents.
Ah,
Yes.
Nice.
And I also grew up in a household where there was, 3 people working full time. My grandfather worked up until I was about 15 years old. And then even after that, he worked part time as well. And then, my grandma was really the only one who was in the house consistently. And she very much took the reins on managing me.
You're probably easy to manage, though, I'm sure, right?
Wait, is this where I get to make fun of only children, or you want me to wait with that? I can do that later.
You can make fun of us all you want. We are an interesting breed, that's for sure. But I definitely say that I was raised to be a very independent thinker. I was never treated like a child in that house. I was always treated like an adult, and I was expected to act like an adult. I had expectations, and they were very clear. And as long as I met those expectations, which was mainly doing well in school and listening and, not being a jerk.
Yes.
I would have been out. So
right. and they kept me very busy, right? I had a lot of extracurricular activities. I spent the majority of my summers actually with my grandparents at their trailer. So I had a lot of exposure to, my cousins and other friends and different things. So I basically spent my whole summers camping.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents, they, took me traveling with them. They took me everywhere with them. So, I was exposed to, very mature situations from a very young age. But really, I loved school. And it sounds so cheesy, but I was one of those kids that actually really did love school, and I took it very seriously. Sometimes to my detriment.
Obviously, you're one of those kids that did homework. We're not alike.
Oh yeah, homework, extra credit. I'd stay after school. I was the teacher's pet. Ugh. Yeah, I think back now and I'm like, oh God, it's kind of insufferable stuff.
I am proud of you. Out of my realm.
I really took school to my advantage. I would definitely say that, and I enjoyed it. I really did.
You're still on that learning curve. You're still, that thrill of learning something new has obviously never left you.
Learning is a lifelong journey. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. So was it just studying? Couldn't have been just studying, because you were doing dancing.
Yeah.
And then you went into rugby.
I danced and I played rugby. I was in theater for a little bit, and I loved theater. And it was more so, I think my mom really tried to get me into these extracurriculars. So I had, social interaction with other kids my age. Even now I have a tendency to hermit. I have to force myself out. I'm very much an introvert, but extroverted when I actually push myself into social situations. But yeah, I was always very creative. When I was younger, I wasn't really athletic. The thought of running and, playing sports like that was just never really something I was interested in. So dance was the perfect activity for me. And yeah, so I danced. For the most part, I danced non-competitively.
I can't wait till this part. And that's the part I want to know. Which of those skills are better served now? The finesse of dance and ballet, or the extroverted, almost borderline violent rugby? Which one serves you better? Okay.
No hesitation 100%. There.
No.
Just thought I'd ask.
No, and I also think it was a culture thing. I was pretty lucky for, I'd say the first 10 years of my dance career. I danced at a really great studio. They did not have a competitive team. They had a company. So it wasn't a culture that fostered competitiveness or anything like that. It was just focused on, fun, meaningful exercise, and get to dress up in fun costumes, and and you really became friends with kind of everybody who obviously you were in classes with. And then I did switch to a studio to start dancing competitively. And if I think back, I probably shouldn't have done that. It was a completely different environment, right? It's very, very dog eat dog environment, and they took it very seriously. And I was not at the point in my life where I was going to take dance that seriously. And then in high school, it was kind of like a fluke. In the 10th grade, they were trying to get a female rugby team together. And a friend of mine had come up and said, I just need you to sign up just so we can get the numbers so we can be approved to have the team, and then you can quit. And I was like, okay, fine.
It's like my school.
Well, a couple of practices in, and I was sold. I was definitely sold. And I, the girls that I played with in high school were fantastic. We ended up the first year practicing with the boys team. And the coach of the boys team, Mr. Farrell, he actually ended up being my grade 12 English teacher, and still one of the most phenomenal people I've ever had the privilege of knowing in my life. So that was a lot of fun to be coached by him. And then we were also coached by another man who was involved with the Hamilton Hornets, which is the team I ended up playing with outside of school, Thomas Zimmer. He was kind of our coach, and again, just another phenomenal human being. So I really had like these really great men who, really came in and helped us girls really become rugby players. And then it ended up going into the NRU and playing for the senior women's team for a number of years. So it was a really great experience, and really the only sport I ever liked.
Wow. Yeah. So what level of rugby is that? Like, were you in any running for the Canadian women's team, or anything like that?
No. I wasn't that good. Like, let's be clear here. I was not that good. But we did play all over Southern Ontario. We went as far as Lindsay and Sarnia and Niagara. So all of our teams were kind of within that region. Toronto has their own separate league. But I played for the senior women's from the time I was 16, I believe, 16 or 17. And actually a couple of the girls who play for Team Canada Sevens also played in the NRU. So I have been hit by them multiple times, have had the wind knocked out of me multiple times by some of them. And, then I get to watch the Olympics, and it's just like, oh yeah, that girl dump tackled me.
That's a professional athlete who has whooped me on the field. And that's a feeling everyone should know, right? There you go.
Yeah. One of those people that you see running at you and you're just like, do I even bother trying?
Yeah.
Get away. Just get away.
I played with some pretty phenomenal women. So
I bet.
Did I pay up my insurance? Did I make sure my will is done? 16 years old.
I know little about rugby. I had a college friend who played intramural, and I know she was always very abused from that. And I have recently learned that hooker is actually a polite term in rugby. So I am completely on board with listening to all of these stories. This is fabulous for me.
Yeah, gotta love that.
I like how you guys name things.
That coming from the lady that's wearing tape on her arms today because she did too much weightlifting. Hey,
look, we'll talk about my competitiveness another day.
And all the bison stuff in the background. They yeah. So they like using our names, our Canadian names down in South Canada.
Hey, I'm an alumni. Believe me, I paid dearly for all of that stuff in more ways than all of you can count, not just my tuition. Nonetheless.
Keg limits and everything. So
whole different episode.
Yeah. And we just got you through therapy on that, so we should be.
I'll be fine.
Yeah. So, Stephanie, rugby, and then you went to university,
Yes.
which for art.
So my undergraduate degree is actually in classics and art history. Classics being the history of ancient Greece and Rome, and the surrounding areas, and kind of pre and post. And then I ended up, and I went to McMaster University. I should say that. It's a fantastic university. Yes, I was born and raised in Hamilton. I stayed in Hamilton for school. I don't think anybody was just really surprised by that. Tried the whole residence thing. I lasted a month and a half.
Okay. Back to that introvert. I needed some space kind of thing.
Yeah, only child. Yeah, typical only child.
Totally fair. Totally fair.
Needed my space. So I did my degree. It was a 4-year degree, and then I went on and I did my master's degree also at McMaster University. I worked under a fantastic professor named Dr. Spencer Pope, and my focus was classical archaeology, particularly foreign Greek architecture and foreign Greek temple structures in southern Italy, and the colonization of southern Italy by the Greeks.
We don't often think about, well, okay, maybe you do, but we don't think about Italy being colonized because Italy's been around, right?
Yeah.
So you went colonized.
Yeah.
Is that where you went on an archaeological dig, or where did you go for that?
No, actually. Actually, the dig that I went on is in modern Bulgaria, right on the Black Sea coast. The town now is called Sozopol, but it was the ancient site of Apollonia Pontica, which is on what is known now as St. Carruth Island. And it's a really interesting site because it progressed from an ancient Greek kind of temple structure, temple complex. And then it was converted to a Christian complex. There was a military hospital on the site, and a number of different things over time. So it was a really interesting experience. One of the really cool parts of me being there was so when you go on a dig, you're assigned a plot, and that's kind of where you work for your time there. And so it's it's a kind of a 2 foot by 2 foot plot, maybe a little bigger than that. Just bigger than the size of a skid.
Okay, there we go.
I'll describe it that way. Just bigger than a typical skid. The spot that I had actually had a grave in it. But the grave was from the time of the Greek pagan temple complex. Okay. So I could go into and just talk about that for hours, but it was really interesting because, and I probably spent 2 days on my hands and knees sifting through sand, picking out beads of a necklace that were made of bone and glass and other materials that would have been around the neck of the person buried.
As a guy that likes using an excavator, I probably wouldn't have done very well in that situation.
Yeah.
I have brothers that watch The Curse of Oak Island, and all we need is 48 hours of backhoe and some dynamite, and we can have this whole thing solved. So we are not going to be invited as a family to go on architectural digs.
It takes a lot of patience. You have to be okay to be in the sun, which I think that was my biggest struggle. Is I am not a summer person. I do not like heat, but I champed it out.
Nice.
Yeah, the outdoors I can do. It's that part where I blow up a big giant hole that they might be frowning on.
So, Steph, I have one question. Minds for Matter. Let's go back to the present.
Yes.
Because that's what we really want to showcase here. And so Minds for Matter and all of the work that you've done as far as trying to help people mentally and help people understand how to deal with others. Where did that passion come from for you? What triggered that passion in you?
I mean, I definitely think it has a lot to do with my own mental health journey. I think everybody has one of these journeys. And, it's something that is becoming a topic that is more openly discussed, which is very important. We operate in a space and an environment in trucking that is very high volume, it's very high stress, and it's very high. There's a lot of high stakes as well, especially when you look at safety. And a lot of times you're not really given the opportunity to take a step back and breathe and really consider what's going on and how to be proactive rather than reactive. And I say all of this in kind of conjunction with each other because one thing that I found a lot of in this industry is burnout. It's something that's been very evident in my entire career and my entire time, and not just in myself, but I've seen it in a number of different people. And my own mental health journey actually started back in high school. David and you and I have discussed this quite extensively. But I also suffered a brain injury in high school. It was in rugby. Mm-hmm. I got a grade 4 concussion during a high school tournament.
That's a good one.
Yep. I lost about a year and a half of my memory. I did get it back, thankfully. It was temporary, but it was a period of about 6 months following that, and then probably about a year after that, where it was back and forth and getting MRIs and different tests done just to see the extent of the injury and the damage. But thankfully, I recovered very quickly. My story is not the same as so many people who have suffered from a similar injury. But the one thing that kind of came out of that, and actually it was my mom that first recognized it, was after the injury. She noticed that I had a temper, and I had never had a temper before. And other little kind of behavioral things like that, she noticed a shift in. I don't think we really correlated the two until much later on. And then, after university, I don't think it was really evident in university because it was an environment that I felt very relaxed in. It wasn't very stressful for me to be in university, so it was never really kind of something that was at the forefront of my mind. Mm-hmm. And then it wasn't until I actually started working full time for One for Freight that I started to realize, the stress and the different things that I was feeling wasn't necessarily just stress. There was something else there. I had a lot of anxiety. I had a lot of depression. And actually it was my father who was the one that pushed me to look at some options for help. And he was actually the one that took me to my first therapist. I ended up not staying with that one. I didn't really think that what she offered was what I needed. But what I ended up finding through our employee assistance program, plug for employee assistance programs because they're exceptionally important and very valuable.
They are. They very much are.
Yep. I found through there an occupational health specialist who changed my life. Absolutely changed my life. And it gave me an avenue to go in and just express everything that I was feeling. And I think a lot of the anxiety and depression that I was feeling was relating to my role and my job. And it wasn't that, I hated my job by any means. I loved my job. I loved what I did. I loved working with people, and particularly the drivers. But their pain and their stress was weighing down on me quite significantly. And it wasn't until I found a healthy coping mechanism to work through that personally that I was able to be successful. And I found that once I was able to do that in a healthy way, then I actually felt like my work became meaningful after that. And so at that point, it kind of entirely shifted how I approach certain situations from a health and wellness perspective. And I always kind of err on the side of, okay, if we're having an issue, what is the root cause of it? What is the real root cause of it? because oftentimes, you
Amen.
think you
Mhm.
think you're solving a problem, but it's often something entirely different.
Yeah.
And and a lot of that is just taking the time and listening, and having different resources available, because that's the other thing. In my experience, right, resources that work for some people didn't work for me, and I know that some people need more than what I needed in that same scenario. But just even being a resource and being open and honest about what I was feeling, because a lot of people do look at me and they look at me like, oh, you're so successful and you're smart and you've got all these degrees, and it always seems like it comes so easy to you. And it's like, well, no, but I no.
Yeah.
It might
Right.
look that way, but it's not, and it's a lot of hard work to be able to do this. And and I want to make sure that other people have the same accessibility to those types of resources that I did.
Mhm.
I like the analogy of a duck. When you see a duck on the water, it looks so calm, but underneath the feet are going like crazy, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we first met, and you talk about feeling the energy and feeling the pain from others. And I was speaking at an event for Trucking HR Canada.
Yeah.
And I talked about my first concussion in rugby. And there's this lady way off in the side, and I felt that I don't know how to describe some of these things, but I felt that connection somehow. And then afterwards, you came up and we talked, and we've been talking ever since.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, and it's very special to finally get you on here, and we've barely scratched the surface. I know that, but I know your passion comes through, and people can check out Minds for Matter. You have a website that we'll put on show notes and everything. And I think Bridget has one more question for you.
Well, of course I do.
She's got lots of questions, Steph. So we'll try to keep her slowed down a little bit.
But I know that, as you said, you traveled extensively. You spent your summers with your grandparents, going to a lot of places, as well as your parents.
Yeah.
What's your favorite road trip? What's that story?
So my favorite road trip is actually not with my parents or my grandparents. Wasn't any of my time spent in Europe or working in hostels or anything like that. It was actually a couple years ago. It was in 2017, I believe. My best friend Ray was living out in Calgary at the time, and was going to be returning to Ontario.
Okay.
And was going to be driving back. And I kind of threw it out there, like, you want some company? And Ray was like, are you serious? Like really? And I was like, absolutely. I'll fly out there and we can drive home together. So Ray was actually staying in Squamish for the summer. So I flew out to Vancouver, and then we went from Squamish all through the US. We hit Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Colorado, Nebraska, and then up through Chicago and home.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a very direct route.
No.
As a trucker, I can tell you that it's not very direct.
She wasn't looking at fuel efficiency here, Dave.
No, that's true.
And we camped through the majority of it, which was an incredible experience.
Yes.
The drive itself was beautiful. We drove all through the Columbia River Gorge. Oh, and we also went down into Utah. Forgot about Utah. Yeah, so we kind of did a little bit of a wave across the US. Yeah. But yeah, it was just single-handedly one of the most incredible experiences. And kind of going back to what we were talking about before, I had been working full-time at One for Freight since 2014, and so it was about 3 years into my time there, and I had not taken a Monday to Friday off in that entire time
right.
that I had worked there. And I made the decision to take about 2 weeks off and do this road trip, and completely cleared my mind. And I actually think I kind of saw a turning point when I returned from that. A lot of the things that I had a lot of anxiety about, or, you know, I'd been procrastinating, or I'd hit a block with it, all of a sudden I got back, and, you know, everything was turning up roses from there.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah.
Nice.
So it really went to show just how valuable rest is.
Yes, it is. And none of us do enough of it.
No.
So to all of our listeners, please send us your favorite road trips. You can tweet, you can send messages on Instagram, you can email us at crazycanuck@gmail.com, because
Crazy Canuck Trucking.
oh, I'm sorry, at Crazy Canuck Truckin'. I didn't mean to say that wrong. crazycanucktruckin.com. And we'd really like to hear from all of you.
Thank you all. Have a great day. And for VIP and her company, Redesign Social, check her out if you want to check her out. We'll have notes in the show notes. That makes sense. We'll have notes where you can find all of us, and where you can find suicide hotlines, and where you can find Minds for Matter.
Yes.
And Stephanie. So because she has a lot to offer, and she'll have a lot of good stuff for a lot of people. So thank you all.
Thank you for the opportunity and inviting me on, David. I really appreciate it.
Well, I want to see you succeed. I want to see things do really well for you. You're an awesome lady who's made some huge changes in the industry already in a short time, and you're going to keep making them.
I hope so.
That I believe.